I really believe that God is at work. He's at work in behind these headlines, and in the midst of all of the bad news, there are things that He is doing that you and I don't know about, and this is some of the good news that's coming out behind the scenes. Corey Buchanan is Associate Director and Chaplain of Chicagoland Prison Outreach. You can find out more about him at chrisfabrylive.org. And if you click on the website, you can go to their CPO Ministries website, and they've got all kinds of information there. You can get a newsletter. You can find out their statement of faith, what's happening, what kind of ministry, the people that they're ministering to. One of those is Andre Burns, who's joining us here today. And we're going to take your calls at 877-548-3675. Andre, I want to ask you, you're in your 30s now.
Yes, sir.
You were involved in a gang. When did you get involved first with a gang?
I was 13.
You were 13.
Yes, sir.
And you were involved with that gang until you were incarcerated then?
Yes, sir.
What was the lure? Why did you want to get involved, or why did you get involved?
Well, it's the crowd of guys that show that they love you. But once you get in trouble, there ain't no more love. There's no more love. It's just for the good times only.
So you felt a sense of belonging when you were there, and a purpose. They told you, had you do stuff, and you made money, and so there was kind of a community that you felt.
Yes, that's pretty much so.
I heard an interview just this last weekend from a fellow from NPR in Chicago who went and interviewed some gang people, some young people, and the way that he got to them was through a couple of Christian ministers. And so a Jewish guy who gets with the Christian ministers, and they drive, and they're going to the prison, and they're going other places. And he said, well, all of the kids that he talked to, when he asked them, who in your life is telling you, don't go toward the gang, don't do this with your life? When he asked that question, the kids would point to the Christians and said, these are the only people over here. No, my parents aren't saying this, or the parent that's at home. My teachers aren't necessarily saying this. People in the neighborhood aren't saying it. They're the only ones who are saying it. Was there anybody in your life who was saying, don't do this?
My mother. My mother. We figure moms don't know what's going on in the street. She always in the house, always working. Mom's always right. Don't care what it is. Mom is always right.
Yeah. Did you get to go and hug her?
Did I? When I leave here, I'm going home to squeeze her.
What about you, Corey? In your life, did you have anybody saying don't go that direction?
It's kind of in my community. No, in my community, I can't think of anyone in my community that was a Christian or to live a godly life. I think when I went outside of my community, I met Christian people. But within my community, no. And actually, within my community, the drug dealers were like gods. They had all the money, all the cars, all the power, all the fame, and they were praised and respected in the communities.
And is there a certain morality, in a sense, a certain inborn morality inside the gang that you do this, you don't do that, you try to do this? In other words, do they discourage these, drive-by shootings and the kind of violence that we read about in the newspapers?
At one point, yes. At one point, that was a little more structure in gangs, more leadership. But postmodernism has also affected the gangs, where there's more rebellion, there's just more rebellion in the gangs, and so there isn't a sense of real leadership in the gangs. There are more people feel like they are outlaws and renegades, and now you have gangs fighting against gangs that are inside, they are inbreeding, fighting one another.
Let me ask you one other question, and then we'll go to your calls again. 877-548-3675. Andre, you learned a trade. You learned welding in this vocational training that Corey was just talking about. What has that meant to your life as far as not going back to gang activity?
Actually, it really gives me another good feeling about having a good life again. When I didn't have a background, I thought it was just over with. And before you know it, God can come in and turn it around for you, let you see it from another angle. And I thank God for Corey and Mr. Holmes, the instructor that was there.
Can you say for sure that you'll never go back to the gang?
Oh, I don't ever plan to go back to the gang.
Yeah. But as I understand it, getting out is difficult. And you know, they come looking for you.
Well,
Did that ever happen?
Well, when I was in the county, I had told them guys that it's over with for me. So, you know, they called me to the washroom. They told me it was going to be a problem for me. I told them, well, let's let the problems begin. And they looked at me and saw, hey, this brother's for real, man. We finna leave up out of here going, you know, the hospital in Cook County is Cermak, so I wasn't going to be the only one going. So they left me alone, told me it was all right. So I knew that was God right then and there saying it was okay for me to leave with no problem.
Yeah, if you stand up against the evil, you know, it looks, you know, and there's a chance that you could have gotten hurt at that point too.
Yes.
But as you said, when you show them you mean business, that this is, they're not going to change your mind simply because you get a whooping or, you know, whatever. That changes things. That changes the chemistry of the relationship because they realize that there's something different with you.
Yes, it does. They see that I have something to live for, which I was telling them all the time. They have something to live for, too.
Something to live for. Deborah's in Chicago. Deborah, thanks for calling today. Go right ahead.
Hi. It just so happens this is Deborah Crockett, and I know Corey very well.
Hey, Deborah.
Hi, how are you? I'm so proud of you. But my comment is, I believe that if the churches in Chicago would simply come out and pray on these corners, we would see a reduction in this violence. Now, Pastor Meeks is doing it now, and I talked to a girlfriend. She went out. I missed last night, but I plan to go with them. And she said that there were 30 white students who I guess were doing summer ministry in Roseland. Now, they're focused in Roseland because that's where Pastor Meeks is. But just imagine if we did that across the city, just on Wednesday night. We would see a reduction in this violence. And I did it with a girlfriend some years ago who lived in Roseland, who lived on a terrible block, drive-by shooting and all of that. And we prayed for a year and a half on her block every Saturday morning. When it was nice, we would go out on the corner, and kids and adults would join us. We saw God work on that block.
Okay, so what you're talking about is not just, it is God's power, that's what you're calling for, but it's also the presence of God's people, which means there is, that people are alive and there is some kind of a revival inside them. That they're not just coming out there in order to, you know, to fill a hole and to stand someplace, but they're called out there because they're called by God to do that.
Yes, all these churches in Chicago, it's something wrong. It's something wrong. And listen, guys, Corey knows I'm a social worker, so I know all about social, and I've supported CPO ministry and continue to do so. But I think just simply the people of God coming together in unity, in boldness, we are going to take our stand wherever we are, and in some cases join with other churches. We see a difference. The police department, I've served on faith-based subcommittee for the 5th Police District. They wanted churches to come out and pray on the corners. They don't blast that. They don't make it known, but they want that. So our response, they don't get any response.
Corey, respond to what Deborah just said.
Oh, I think it'll be powerful to see people who care. That's the community. They're looking for people to care. What we see so often, there aren't people who care. They don't care about the fatherless or the widow or the orphan. And so how can we care? And coming out praying is definitely a way to show that care. I think it has to be something that needs to be consistent. Maybe there needs to be prayer on the corner, prayer on certain porches, but that there needs to be a sense that we care, and I think it's a way to start. We have to get more involved in the lives of people, and we're not talking about atheists. We're talking about individuals who believe in God. And so there's already a ground and a foundation that's laid, but the church has to step up and do the hard work of building relationships and getting involved in people's lives and believe in God.
And I've heard it said, the only thing that it takes for evil to flourish is for good people to do nothing. Mm-hmm. Or, I think the exact quote is men, but it's the same thing. To hold self-preservation as our highest goal. I want to stay safe, and I do. But at some point, you have to understand this is not just about you, and it's not just about your own community, or if you're in the suburbs of Chicago or wherever you're listening today, in Florida or in Cleveland. This cuts across every socioeconomic barrier that we're talking about here, every religious barrier as well. If we really believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, are we willing to make that message known, not just to the people that it's easy to make it known to? I'm going to sit here and talk to you on the radio on a microphone and go about my business and never have an encounter with anybody that it makes as huge of a difference as it's made in Andre's life. Let's take our final break. We'll come back with our remaining moments here on Chris Fabry Live.
Have a comment about the program today? Call 877-LIVE-675. That's 877-LIVE-675.